Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Hello, my beautiful friends. Today we talk with Carly Mallow. She is the lead at myStoria in the Concierge Team. She has over 15 years of nursing experience, including 6 years specializing in fertility. She has witnessed firsthand the misinformation and a lack of knowledge surrounding women's reproductive health. She is a master of her craft. She is here to support and help people through their process and journey of fertility. Her dedication and experience makes her an invaluable asset in promoting informed and compassionate care. I hope that you enjoy the conversation today of me and Carly talking through just the ins and outs of what people should be knowing around their fertility journey and her experience with myStoria. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back to Friends with Fertility. Today our friend is Carly Mallow. Welcome, Carly.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about myStoria. What is that for those of us that don't know?
Yeah, so myStoria was founded by Jessica Chalk, who had a 6-year-long fertility journey herself. And she really wanted to assemble a team, all of which we all have like personal connections to fertility, to build a platform that offered what she felt was missing during her journey. You know, everyone says it's a bad experience. No one is like, that was such an amazing fertility journey. I just loved every minute of it. You know, I always hear that people say, worst club, best members. So I'm sure you yourself have heard that as
Yes.
well. And it's just like access to care, I find, is a problem. Like clinics are only meeting about 5 to 10% of the actual need. There's a lot of barriers to care out there. Information's overwhelming. Like people, the internet's like the Wild West out there. Everyone's like, is this relevant to me? This says that. It's just like chaotic. You're going down these rabbit holes in the middle of the night. The clinics themselves are overwhelmed. The appointments are rushed. You go in with 20 questions, maybe you get 5 answered. And it's not because they don't always want to, it's just they're trying to help so many people so fast. So, all these problems we're seeing. So, Jessica's like, how can we solve for that? So, myStoria is a platform that addresses these needs. We create a reproductive health overview. So you answer questions, you input information, and then have access to trained professionals like me, education that's going to help make you more knowledgeable, help teach you how to advocate for yourself, and help you track your journey. So we can get your medical records for you, or you can upload them yourself. And then they're all in there. And because sometimes I find people have like more than one medical provider, right? So everything's scattered everywhere. And it's like, how do you get your whole team rowing in the same direction? How do you see your journey so that you have everything in one central location? And that's really what we're trying to do. And then when you have access to me, I can kind of try and fill in those gaps and say, maybe ask this question to your provider. Do you need a second opinion? Is your clinic offering everything that you need? Not to say that it's bad or anything, but maybe you've outgrown them now and you need this extra stuff that this person has over here. So we can do all of that. And we also give you access to a community. I was saying earlier, it's a little bit of the Wild West out there. Some of these communities, they actually actively like block trained professionals, and really good medical information actually isn't getting in there. So here it's like, peer to peer. Yes, you have people that are going through the same thing as you, but then we're also in there to provide that extra little bit of guidance as needed as well.
That's great because I find so often there's groups that are not curated with correct information, or I might be reading something and say, oh, that sounds familiar to me. And I'm going to self diagnose because I read that Carly wrote that she ended up getting pregnant because she did XYZ, and it's a little bit similar to me. So I think it's great to have communities where they are curated by people who can say, wait a second, You need to check with your own doctor, and these are the reasons why it may be different, etc. So, what do you find is most happening within those communities? Is it sharing their stories? Is it asking for help? Both? What's the common theme that you guys see most in the community?
For us, it's both. People are sharing their stories and kind of through sharing, sometimes then that's how they're asking, "This is what I'm going through. This is my story. This is where I'm at. This is going on right now. Does anyone have like any ideas or tips or recommendations?" So I see, peer-to-peer recommendations, and that's how I can sometimes look and I'll be like, "Okay, that's amazing. That's great. And here's an extra little tidbit that I have from a different perspective." So I feel like getting like all those different perspectives in one spot, so you get a like more holistic approach that way. Yes, this is what I need to do emotionally, but this is what I need to do maybe on a more medical side is ask my doctor this specific question, where without that insider knowledge, you would never know that.
What advice would you give somebody who is just starting on their fertility journey and they kind of don't know where to even begin?
Sign up for myStoria and I'll guide you the whole way, really. But yeah, education, I find like there's just so many people out there that don't even know enough about their own cycle and their
Right.
own body. So taking the time and like we provide that education in there and we give it so you can actually answer questions appropriately with the base knowledge. As a fertility nurse, focusing on fertility for over 6 years now, I've seen so many patients in my own career come through and like they didn't even know what day 1 was. Or like everything was irregular, but their mom told them that was normal. And it's just frustrating because you're thinking, man, like if you would have just been educated appropriately throughout your life, like we all should be, you could have addressed some of these irregularities years ago and maybe not have to be sitting with me right now. And that I find is like the most frustrating thing as a female. It's like, why was nobody telling us this whole time?
100%. I feel like we have those conversations multiple times a day of just, we wish we would have. And I think that's part of shining the light of this narrative of maybe you've gone through your own fertility journey, but you can now spread the word to somebody else to who has daughters and sons for that matter of knowing what is cycle day one? What should your ovulation look like and feel like and all of that stuff to normalize that conversation that it's more than just your period, during your cycle, and even with that knowing what's a normal period and what's not, because like you said, most people think it's normal when it in fact is not. So you mentioned a couple times working with you, and is that part of what's considered the concierge services, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I'm the head of the concierge services. So I have a growing team underneath me and it's included as part of the platform. So what's amazing about it is, you could hop on and be like, I'm lost, I'm confused. I can help you with that right from the beginning. Or you can hop on and start inputting your information, fill out questions, your fertility health assessment, and then I can and book an appointment with me and I can go through if you give me access and I can kind of look at everything you put in and start making my own notes to say, okay, this is what I'd like to talk about. And then we can have an appointment. And then I actually can meet you and we can talk, we can discuss. You can ask all the questions that you want. And then I can say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Ask your doctor about XYZ and kind of teach people how to advocate for themselves. I mean, how do you know where you are in your journey or how to even advocate for yourself if you don't even know what questions to ask? That's often the biggest problem is nobody tells you this stuff ahead of time. It's always people coming out the other end of the journey who, like you said, are going out and like sharing and saying, hey, this is what I learned, throughout how many years. But giving that people that knowledge and power right away can hopefully shorten their journey so they can get to their goal hopefully faster and with less money spent.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth, Carly, of what I talk about all day, every day. So I love it so much because I think also to that, when you're talking about the nurses and the clinics, yes, I think they would ideally have more time for us. But there's also, as the patient, you have this feeling of, oh, I shouldn't ask that because I know they're busy, or there's a lot of people in the waiting room, or I shouldn't be emailing again because I just emailed her yesterday to ask this question for the nurse or the doctor, whichever it may be. And this kind of eliminates that to a whole separate entity, so to speak, to say, I don't even have to feel that anxiousness around being the problem child, so to speak, with the clinic because I can ask all these questions to Carly and her team to know if I'm headed in the right direction or what else I might need to ask and whatever. And I think a lot of people don't talk about that you do have this sense of, should I ask more questions? Or do they think I'm stupid that I'm asking all these questions and whatnot? And I tell doctors all the time when I meet with them, you better be prepared for clients, patients now because they are so educated on what's happening and their care. And whether it's from people like you or coaches or whoever it may be, they do now know that just because you have a white coat on doesn't mean that you are the end all be all of information that's best for themselves. So I love the fact that there's this another outlet to ask the questions and get help without feeling like you're burdening the clinic.
Absolutely. I mean, that was, working in fertility. I think that's why I wanted to kind of pivot and get out of sort of a more traditional role because I'm like, I want to reach more people. Because just over the years, I was sort of just feeling like this angst, like we can do better. And I'm just seeing so many people come in. I was feeling frustrated. I'm like, I want to reach more people. I want to help people on a larger scale. We need to, educate people more so they can push back a little bit more and hopefully just drive change across the board for hopefully all women's health.
It's going that way whether other people like it or not. I think that that's the other thing is the clinics recognizing that there are so many outlets now for patients to go to get help, whether that's multiple clinics on the same block or the same city, that there's a lot of options. And knowing that you have the support of somebody else to say it's okay if you want to leave your clinic and go try somebody new. It's okay if you think maybe you should be in a different protocol than your doctor is because it's not just one and done anymore like it was 10 years ago where it was really hard to find help. Now there's so much help there. So do you see more people feeling empowered on their journey once they have the education of knowing what the options are?
Absolutely. Like I've had a few people now, like huge light bulb moments for them. For example, like having like a plethora of symptoms of endometriosis, and like nobody, no doctor has even said, I think you might have endo, and like no follow up testing done. So I was able to kind of educate them a little bit more on what that means and what it means for fertility and their general health. So they could go back and ask questions and request further testing and potentially different protocols. It's like if you're being pumped full of estrogen all the time, that's not exactly good for endometriosis. This needs to be considered in your health. And they're like, wow, it's like nobody would have, I would have never known to say anything. Or like somebody who, looking through the records, having multiple conversations with them and being able to say, okay, you need to go back to your doctor and ask these questions because I think this may have happened in your cycle. So ask them about it and see what they said. This looks a little funny to me. And they did. And the doctor agreed, like they ovulated during their IVF cycle. They got to redo another cycle and got all their medications covered because of that and a new protocol. So save this person thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I see that all the time, unfortunately. And it's so sad because depending on how you do advocate for yourself and stand up for yourself in those situations, they could just bypass you and say, "Oh, it didn't work out this time. We can try again next cycle or whatever." And when really it's like, "No, you need to take some ownership in this, right? You're listening for their guidance of how to run this machine, the machine being your body, and if they guide you the wrong way and something goes awry, that's not just a small situation. So I love that you're helping people to advocate for themselves to recognize, hey, I need to get this done again and have it covered. Do you notice a lot of difference between working with people that are in Canada versus anywhere else, the States or anywhere else in the world for that matter?
I'd say there's not a huge difference. There's always like common threads. I mean, I really find it depends on their doctor because some doctors are absolutely like amazing and they're coming up with very individualized protocols and care. And you can tell like they're really doing everything. And then there's, you can tell people are maybe going to other countries and trying to save money. And I can tell it's like very cookie cutter. Their actual diagnosis isn't really being considered, so where I have to start like digging a little bit more. I find in Canada in regard to like even like diet stuff, there's more of a push for like taking like an anti-inflammatory kind of approach. That's why we'll talk about like Mediterranean diet and things like that. Where I find there's a lot of talk about keto in the States. So like weird little differences like that sometimes. And I mean, we've even seen it ourselves, like growing up through the years, there's always like fads of like diet and what everyone's doing. But I see a little bit difference like that. But in regard to specific protocols, it really depends on the doctor.
Agree. I think this is what I mention quite often is the medications themselves are the same wherever you are in the world and how they're going to try to stimulate for IVF, but at the same time, the emotional journey and the doctors and the support you get will differ depending on where you are. And not only to your point of the doctor, I see a lot more of the younger doctors, so to speak, coming in that are taking more time and understand this more holistic approach of the patient and understanding, yeah, maybe there is endo there and or something else that has gone misdiagnosed. I think it's important to note that endometriosis itself is very underdiagnosed. It usually at an average takes 7 years for people to get a diagnosis of endometriosis because it is such a funky situation. But there are signs that can say, "Hey, I wanna get this checked out," right? And if you are educated on knowing what those signs are, that can, like you said, get you to where you need to be faster. And our ultimate goal is always to have you get to your baby faster. But within that, we want you to have a healthy pregnancy. So let's talk about a little bit about that. So once people conceive and they're with myStoria, what happens to them there? Because I see a lot of people, myself, I was the same. When I was technically graduated from my fertility clinic, it was like, oh no, like I love them so much and I'm so comfortable here and whatever. And or if I was told to get off progesterone, it was like, it felt like that safety net, and safety nets started to kind of come off and or the training wheels. But at the same time, everything was okay, but you have this sense of that's what I know. So, how does myStoria follow through the patient journey after they get through those first 8 to 10 to 12 weeks?
I welcome people to continue to use myStoria. I mean, that's what it's there. It's like your journey just doesn't end when you get pregnant. And there's also, it's just like I find a whole new set of fears and anxieties that come, and you still need to be supported through that. And, it's sort of a one day at a time, especially for people who've, experienced recurrent loss and stuff. It's like, no, keep tracking, keep uploading your documents throughout the way, have all those medical documents, continue to ask questions, book visits with us. I have a concierge member who's experienced and to this day works in labor and delivery, so we have that. And it's good, I think, to have those talks, especially, when people make a plan and they want, okay, this is my birth plan. And I think, you have all these expectations, like things are going to go this way, but it's like, you need someone to talk to you and prepare you that it may not. Things can happen, or maybe you just go to labor really fast and there's no time like to get things done. So really like looking at the different scenarios and preparing for that. I find even doctors in that field don't always fully sit you down and prepare you. Like, let's make a plan, let's do this, but let's talk about what happens if this happens or that happens, and this is how that would go, and this is what's going to happen when you get to the hospital. Like, there's not enough details. Like, I myself know that you're just kind of blowing out in the wind. So I invite people, continue. We want to be with you your whole journey.
I think that's great, and so supportive in both ways. Having had 3 children myself, I can say none of the doctors ever sat me down and said, "This is what to expect." And then they also think because you've done it before, you have you know what to expect, and you do to a certain degree, but also things change every time. Every delivery is different, right? So what may have happened before doesn't happen the next time, etc. But back to fertility and getting past that 8 to 10 to 12 weeks, I always say that the positive HCG, positive beta is just step one, especially for people that are on the fertility journey. Then it's the heartbeat. Well, even before that, it's the sac and all the things that somebody who has not been in fertility doesn't even realize. They may go to the doctor the first time at 12 weeks and not even be aware of all the anxiety things that come up between that. But then also the anatomy scan. I find that with most of my patients, we kind of stay together at least to the anatomy scan because they have this ongoing anxiety of what if it hasn't happened to them, but they've seen something happen to somebody else, unfortunately. I think that's the upside and the downside of these communities, right? It may not be their story, but they've heard somebody else have that story. So then it's now a program in their brain that this could potentially happen. And it's real fear. There's no way we can pretend that it doesn't happen, but we can help mitigate the anxiety and fear through that. And I think with situations like myStoria, it helps give you an outlet to go through those times and those weeks of early pregnancy with less fear and therefore your baby is healthier because you're not getting all that cortisol pumped through your body regularly when you're worried about all that stuff. Do you see that often too with the people that are in the app with you guys of feeling once they get to a certain point that all is well, or do they feel like, okay, now it's something else, now it's something else, now it's something else?
Well, we're newer, so I don't have anyone yet that's, like, that far, like, into their pregnancy, so that's what we're gonna find out, and I look forward to speaking with more people because this is for us, by us. So I want people, tell me what you need. If something's missing, tell me because I will find experts. I will create more education for you. This is for you. We want to continue to grow and build to fulfill all of your needs. So if there's a gap somewhere, like let me know because we're gonna get there. Because we can, we're starting here, but we want to go here, right? So
That's so cool to be on the ground floor, to be able to affect the change of how this happens for the collective of everybody who's joining, to be able to give the feedback and then see that happen in real time. That's awesome.
yeah, we want everyone to participate. We everyone's voice is important. Everyone's needs. I mean, there may be common threads, but they're all unique, right? So what are these touch points? Even with the pregnancy, like I remember non-invasive prenatal testing. Nobody even told me about that. I didn't even know years ago that that existed. It wasn't something that was offered to me. I don't know if it was ever offered to you, but it's like, people who have these extra fears or anxiety and they have the resources, it's like we can educate that. There are options. Some doctors just are not giving people any options even when it comes to advanced testing. Like I realize there's guidelines out there that'll say, okay, don't offer this as part of an initial workup, whether, it's fertility, pregnancy, whatever, but oh, if this happens then recommend it. But I've seen people get extremely upset when they've had standard testing done. Oh, and it's like unexplained infertility or something. They do like 3, 4 cycles, go back, see the doctor, and then they're like, oh, well, you could do DNA fragmentation if you want. And I've seen people get really upset. So like, why wasn't that offered to me in the beginning? And I feel like that's something that's being ignored. It's like, yes, give your recommendations as a doctor. This is where I think we should start. These other things are offered, they're not maybe necessarily fully recommended for you right now, but if you have the resources and you want to do these extras, that is your choice. That is your right. And that's something I really want to push for across the board as well. Some people might want to do all the testing before they even start. And some people may be like, no, I will wait for that one, but
Yeah.
shouldn't we get the option?
I agree 100%. In a lot of those cases, I didn't have an option because of my age. And I think seeing so many people that are younger that come to work with me that don't get that option because they're not that as old as I was, it's hard for me to see that because I know that the options are there, right? And it shouldn't just be because you have X, Y, and Z or your age or whatnot. Because I think that the level of peace of mind that people get when they know, okay, I at least can eliminate, I don't have to worry about this. The amount of anxiety and mental stress that goes along with either trying to conceive or pregnancy and or pregnancy loss for that matter is enormous. And the industries just don't take that into consideration. If we give people this information, the level of stress will go down and therefore they're going to be healthier people in general because they know they have the answers up ahead of time, which I love. What do you guys do as far as helping people with their mental health on the journey of fertility?
So I don't personally like provide like official like mental health support, but we do start asking questions. And what we're trying to do is build resources to recommend. So I find like mental health is something that people often push to the side in fertility, especially if it costs extra money and stuff, because you want to save that money for your treatments and your cycles.
Of
But it's like,
course.
no, it is absolutely critical. It affects your overall health. So definitely providing those resources and recommendations to say, are you talking to somebody? I'll give you a list of resources. This is who I would recommend that you speak to. And whether they, want to or not, obviously that's their choice in the end, but really curating that list to say, okay, where are you? What's your location? This is who's good. This is who's available to you. And this is what they specialize in, and sending them to people who actually like are experienced in fertility and what they're going through.
100%. I remember again in my journey when I asked if there's anybody I can talk to, the only option was Resolve at that time. And I wanted somebody who I could just talk to directly rather than in a group setting or whatnot. And then when I had my loss and went to a therapist that specialized in miscarriage loss, it was just so disheartening because I was just looking for hope. And it was just, we were on different pages. And I think that is really where it comes down to with everything in this journey, whether they're trying to connect with the nurse, is hope and answers. And how can I get to my baby sooner and faster and safer and all the things. So I love what you guys have put together and are doing to help move the community in the right direction and feel supported along the way, that they have everything in one place and they can get the answers that they need. How can they find out more about myStoria and all that you guys are doing?
So they can check out www.mystoria.com for our website. Everything is on there, and then there's links to sign up as well. They could also check out our Instagram at mystoria fertility, and they can check me out at Carly_fertility advocate as well on my Instagram. So we're always posting stuff, education, funny stuff. I always love to be a little bit spicy and add a little bit of humor in there as well. And, I always encourage people like reach out to me. You can DM me if you're having questions, concerns. I can offer you a demonstration of myStoria as well. You could do like a 15-minute appointment with me if you're unsure if it's the right fit for you. We could do that for you as well. That's no problem. I'm always willing to give a helping hand. Like we really care. Like I just want to help people and make this easier and more streamlined. No more carrying around the binder. We're it. Like,
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing the information. I can't wait to see how you guys continue to grow and help so many people on their journey to parenthood.
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.